Good evening all, and welcome. I just want to apologise for yesterday's editing glitch. I ran through everything and I'm genuinely stumped as to how that happened. Sometimes I understand, well, most of the time I understand why exactly something happened that shouldn't have, so it's just really confusing and weird. I hope it doesn't happen again today, because there's no reason for all the stuff that played around to make it happen to play around. But anyway, without further ado, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. It's 2013, and I am a freshman in college. I'm living on campus with one roommate in the girls' dorm, so everything is pretty chill for the first semester. Typical college dorm things. Well, our room had actually not been used in a very long time, if ever. It was used as a showroom, but our freshman class was so big that they had to convert it into actual living space. The Wi-Fi didn't even work in there, so I spent many nights in the laundry room across the hall scrambling to finish forgotten homework due at midnight. Anyway, we leave for Christmas break and come back in January of 2014. My roommate had gotten there about 30 minutes before me and had left her stuff on the bed with the door locked, while she went to say hey to some other girls down the hall. I got there, unlocked the door, and promptly discovered that someone had trashed our room. Her suitcases were flung everywhere. My drawers were open, our beds weren't made anymore, and even the ceiling tiles were moved out of place. One had even fallen down onto my bed. So I call my roommate and tell her it's totally not cool to trash the room, and she is subsequently very confused. She comes back and is just as confused as I am, saying she had only been in the room to drop off her bags and then she had left. Well, we asked the RA, and nobody could have possibly gotten into our room, and blah blah blah. Okay, fine. Whatever. So as the semester goes on, things take a turn for the freaky. It started out with small things, like noises in the middle of the night coming from different corners of the room. But it's a college dorm. There's bound to be noises. But from inside the room? Strange, but explainable. Then about 2 weeks later, we're both dead asleep about 2 a.m. The dorm is quiet. It's a Christian college, so there's lights out and a curfew. And I'm startled awake by something being flung across the room. My roommate wakes up, wondering why I had chosen this particular time to throw crap around our room. So I promptly turned on the light. So, just to give you a visual, our room was rectangular in shape. Our beds were arranged to an L shape. Her bed was parallel to the top portion of the room, so one side of her bed was against the wall. Our mini fridge was against the wall between our beds, and my bed is along the long wall. There was open space in the middle, and a built-in desk flanked on either side by small closets made more like shelves. On the other long wall, and then the door at the very end of the long wall. Above my roommate's bed, there was a shelf, and on that shelf was a stuffed animal, a Febreze odor spray thing that ran on batteries that had been out since first week of school, as the batteries are expensive, and a plastic cup with the school logo on it. Well, upon inspection, we discovered what was flung. It was the odor spray thing from the top shelf. Odd, since it had been there since the first week of school this semester and had never been knocked off. We assumed that it was some sort of air conditioning malfunction, even though nothing else ever moved and there weren't any vents near the shelf. Logically, there would have had to have been some substantial force for that thing to fly across the room and land on the floor at my bed, a good 7 to 8 feet away. So we go back to bed. For the next couple of months, this thing periodically flies off the shelf. I also noticed that during this time, my roommate started acting sort of strange. She was tired and moody and didn't seem like herself. One night I woke up with this awful feeling of dread. I noticed something moving out of the corner of my eye in the darkest corner of the room by the door. I turned my head to see a little better, thinking perhaps it was my roommate. It was not my roommate. It was like a shadow, but solid, hunched next to the door as if ready to pounce. It rocked back and forth on its feet a little, like a person trying to keep their balance, ready to spring. I kept my eyes on it and called out to my roommate. It stopped teetering when I spoke, but it was still there. It was watching me, and I could feel it. It took about 3 times of saying to my roommate for her to respond. I think there's... I didn't really know how to explain what I was looking at. She sleeps facing the wall every night, so I knew she wasn't looking at the thing. Then she whispered, "Do you see it?" My blood ran cold. I assumed it was a trick of the light, but I had woken her for confirmation that I was just seeing things. But instead she stayed facing the wall, refusing to roll over. I sacked up and looked away from the thing hunched in the corner and turned my lamp on top of the mini fridge on. I looked back and it was gone. My roommate finally sat up and turned to look at me. She proceeded to tell me that she had been seeing it most nights after I fell asleep, since the first time this spray thing had been flung across the room. She generally stayed up a bit later than me, as she was a nursing major and had tons of homework to get done. I was normally asleep by 10. She had been seeing this thing for months and said nothing. After that incident, I had the idea to keep a small light on at night and use my laptop to film whatever was going on, specifically how the spray thing was getting flung across the room. Coincidentally, the night incident stopped any night we decided to film. However, there was one night my roommate woke me up from her bed, telling me that she could hear the spray thing scraping across the shelf, about to be flung. So I sat up and was messing with my phone, not facing her bed. She was standing at the desk, turning on the laptop to start filming, also not facing her bed. We both then hear a thud, and look at each other, and then turn around to see the spray thing, sitting positioned perfectly on her bed, with the light flashing on it, despite it having no batteries. We calmed down, started the laptop, and went back to bed after putting the air thing back on the shelf, assuming all would be well since we were taping. We didn't wake up again that night. The next morning I woke up to find my laptop in a different position than I had left it. We went back through the video and saw that over the span of 10 minutes, my laptop had been mysteriously rotated towards the wall, making our beds out of view. I then proceeded to go over to my boyfriend's at the time, who was an engineering major, to show him proof I had that something was happening. He had been rather skeptical, only believing that we believed something was happening and that we were scared. When I went to open the video, it played 2 minutes and the rest was gone. All of the video but the first 2 minutes were just gone. It showed us turning on the video, getting ready for bed, turning off the lights, my roommate rolling over and putting in music, which she had apparently been doing since the beginning to block out noises, as the thing made noises in the corner when it moved. Me setting my alarm and rolling over to face the wall, and then nothing. I was very distraught, and in order to placate me, my boyfriend came to my dorm room on open house, which was conveniently that night, and another of our engineering friends. They spent the entirety of the allotted time trying to replicate how the spray thing might have ended up on the other side of the room, and also sitting perfectly in the center of my roommate's bed. They couldn't figure out how that would happen, and insisted we must be missing something. This carried on for the entire semester. We didn't tell anybody else about the strange happenings, but still our friends felt uncomfortable when we left them alone in our room while hanging out. Finally, the semester ended, and we went home for the summer. The spray thing sat happily on my shelf in my bedroom at home with no problems, completely forgotten. I lived with my same roommate in the next semester, eager to see her after summer break, only to discover that she was not quite the same person after our experience in the freshman dorm. She did not sleep. I didn't notice at first, but after a couple of weeks I picked up on the fact that she couldn't sleep. She looked tired and stressed and perhaps sick. Her grandma finally convinced her to see a doctor, who told her she was suffering from insomnia, which had been induced by the stress of college. We both knew why she couldn't sleep. What happened in that dorm during the semester ended our friendship. It changed her so completely that she was not the same person I had forged a friendship with at the beginning of our time in college. I always end this story with the conclusion that everything that happened could have all been in our heads, or that they could very well be a logical explanation for what happened, but I have yet to find it. We soon parted ways, but I was recently informed from a mutual friend that she still suffers from anxiety whenever it is dark. I am in the German Armed Forces. It was the winter of 2016, and we had heavy snowfall in an area which is rather uncommon for northern Germany, and my battalion went on a maneuver or combat drills, and after a few weeks we came back to the training grounds, and there were some old abandoned farms and training buildings around as well. We've been told the village name was Hellwich, so the whole battalion rolled in and we fought during the day and started to dig holes for night watch in the afternoon. So my platoon was on the far left flank, and the walk from the rabbit hole to the main camp was about 1.5 kilometers, or 0.9 miles. My platoon was not allowed to dig in the area, since there were burial mounds, and we basically scratched at the frozen surface and started to build snow walls. When the first night broke in, the first shift was already sitting on the fire watch and doing night watch and patrolling between the camps. We were told which shift we had to do, what the call sign was, and the frequency of the shifts. Night watch was from 2 to 4 AM, and I got a shift with a buddy of mine. We were already CPLs at the time, so he and I went to sleep at 10 PM, and one of the night watch guys came down to wake us up and said shift switch. So he waited while we were getting dressed. We loaded our rifles, and while you were getting dressed, we noticed more snow coming down. And I mean tons. I've never seen so much in northern Germany. When we started sneaking our way down the rabbit hole, I saw something in the woods in the corner of my eye, and brushed it off as we came to the rabbit hole where our comrade was already waiting, shaking like crazy. He said to watch out, that he thought there was a big boar in the woods or something. We brushed it off, and my buddy replied that your brain must be frozen, and that there are no animals in the area except for some small deer. So we were sitting there in the rabbit hole, looking through night vision, which wasn't working very well, because it was snowing. So we basically whispered about the day, trying to stay awake. And after about an hour and 40 minutes, my buddy told me to go to the camp to wake up the next shift. So I started to walk the way I was supposed to. But after 15 minutes, I noticed something was not right. So I pulled out my compass and checked, and it wasn't moving one bit, even though I was spinning on the spot. And I started to proceed to walk using my general sense of direction. Then out of nowhere, I heard the sound of sticks breaking and something moving in the woods. Since this was a drill, I thought it might be an enemy. I kneeled down next to a tree and watched the movements as well as I could, and used the scope of my rifle, but I could not see anything. I waited for about 2 minutes, and when I was about to stand up I heard growls. Not like a dog, more like clicking growls. It was quite hard to explain. I'd never heard anything like that before, but I couldn't see anything. So I started to sneak towards the growl with my rifle pointed in the direction, and thought about shooting it, even though it was drill ammo. I know a loud bang would scare off any animal, and it would bolt away, but I also thought about the consequences, as my mind was playing tricks on me. So I proceeded a bit further into the woods, and then saw something moving on 4 legs, and it had a smaller, slender body, like the body that did not belong to these 2 clicking, growling noises. It was about this time, while I was kneeling, that a stick broke, and the thing made a long growl and stood up on 2 legs, and I swear it was about 2 meters tall. It was breathing relatively slowly and silently, not moving. I slowly lifted my rifle, even though I wanted to scream. I was never scared like this before, and I had the feeling that if I made the wrong move now, I would most certainly be dead. All my danger sensors were going off. It seemed like whatever this thing was did not see me turn around, making again these clicking growls when it turned back to me. I got up and was slowly retreating backwards still, looking at the thing, when it suddenly turned around, got on all 4s again, growling. I turned my back, and it felt like that thing was flying behind me, and I prayed that it would be away, and that I could get on a new shift. My buddy and he started hissing at me like, "Dude, you've been gone 30 minutes, where have you been?" I was pointing in the direction I came from, but nothing had been there. I told them I got lost, and some supernatural animal was getting a lot closer. My buddy looked at me and said, "Let's go to sleep, man. You need it. When we get to camp." I think I got my sleeping bag and rifle locked and loaded, and we were inside and couldn't sleep. I was thinking, what would have happened? What I've seen. And I've done some research about German folklore, but nothing really matches with the thing I saw, and honestly, have nightmares sometimes. I even talked to a priest about it, and he told me it was a demon, and said some prayers for me, and praying with me. So please, if anyone knows what it is, I would like to know. My best friend, myself, and two of our friends went out to her bachelorette party. My friend Anna and I are big paranormal fans, and we heard about this haunted museum. My best friend, the bride, gave us tickets to go. She and another one of our friends weren't going because they were afraid of those kind of things. Anna and I were excited. We go into the museum. It's dark and scary but amazing. It had so many wonderful artifacts, from Wyatt Earp to P.T. Barnum, amazing artifacts. We entered this room where there was a cauldron that belonged to a serial killer. I was standing there. It is important to add that I hadn't felt anything at all in the museum, just a lot of fun jump scares and everything like that. Also, it's important to note, I carry with me at all times 2 charms blessed with white magic for protection. As I was standing by this cauldron, my midsection suddenly became ice cold. So cold, in fact, that I ended up wrapping my arms around my stomach. I felt so terribly uneasy. I suddenly felt like a man, a tall man. I kept picturing a man in my mind, and he was pissed that I was there. He was standing over me. The best way I can describe it is that he was standing right above my back and was leaning down over the top of me, just staring at me. You know, in the way a bully might intimidate you to give them something that they want. He wanted me to leave. It wasn't until after we left the room that we were informed that a witch who practiced black magic was in a room and she had performed a ritual in that cauldron. I was standing next to the cauldron with my white magic charms to protect me. I was not welcome in that room, and he made me know that I should never go back. 2. After we exited the cauldron room, we had seen so many other cool things, and I didn't feel anything for a long time. I wasn't feeling anything at all, actually. I was finally relaxing. I mean, there was some more jump scares, but it was all fun. This, though, terrifies me, just thinking about it. If you don't know what a Dybbuk box is, I would suggest you look it up, because it's too hard to describe. They did a movie called The Possession starring Jeffrey Dean Morgan, where it focuses on this object. Our tour guide had informed us that we did not have to enter this room if we didn't want to. Too many people had experienced terrifying things. Anna and I were feeling brave enough, because the tour guide informed us that it is behind a lot of protection and couldn't bother us because the doors to the box were closed. The Dybbuk box had been buried for almost a decade in a gold-cased box to protect the previous owner. The previous owner kept it buried until the museum owner bought it from him. Entering the room, it was like the other rooms, dark. There were writings in Jewish on one of the walls, and there was a donation box in the corner as an offering to the Dybbuk demon to keep it from following us home. By the right side of the room, there was a gold case that the previous owner kept it in, and in the middle of the room was the actual Dybbuk box. It was behind bulletproof glass. I had gone up to the glass, looking around, to see that there was sage and salt that was about 3 inches thick around it. I didn't think too much of it, and I kept going on with looking around the rest of the room. Even on the back of the box there was Jewish writing, which was fascinating, and suddenly Anna goes, "Hey Nora, look at all this sage and salt." I look over as she tapped on the glass and showed me the sage and salt. It was after this that Anna started acting weird. Anna kept staring at the box. Keep in mind there were at least 10 of us in the room, but we were all staring towards the wall. Anna was just walking around the box. She was fixated on it. She couldn't tear her eyes away. Seriously, I even said, "Anna, look at the gold box the guy put it in." She looks up for 2 seconds. "Oh, cool." Then she was staring back at the box again. She circled it at least 6 times. I thought she was in a trance. That's the best way I can describe it. Finally, our tour guide said it was time to go. Then I tapered her arm and said, "Anna." It was like after that, nothing had even happened, and we went into the next room. I will never forget how fixated she was on the box. If it had her attention like that with the doors closed, I'm terrified to think of what would have happened had the door been open. Finally, there is a room called the Demon Room, which will haunt me forever. We entered this room, and it had a set of basement stairs, dirt, and some kind of ritualistic items in a glass case. The room was lit up with blood-red lights, and there was a mannequin dressed like a demon in the corner. I was standing, not really freaked out, just looking at all the weird things that were in this room. We all had the daylight scared out of us when one of the other visitors, who was drunk, fell onto the floor and the door flew back and hit the wall. It broke the tension in the room, even if it was just for a second. I was finally relaxed enough to keep us from stepping on the cursed dirt that was a wood rail. I was standing near a door, so I was good, 20 feet away from the stairs. I decided I wanted a closer look at this baby doll that was sitting on the stairs, so I walked to the rail. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like a dog growling underneath the stairs, like a warning for me to not come any closer. I literally said out loud, "This is my cue to leave," so I walked by everyone and left the room. After our tour, I told Anna I taste dirt, and I wasn't meaning anything. I was like tasting it maybe. Perhaps there was a bit of dirt in the room, or the musty smell or something like that. Anna had brought a bottled water and she gave it to me to wash the taste out. It didn't work. The taste went from dirt to mud, and the taste didn't leave for an hour and a half, and it felt like a warning. I was being warned that I was not welcome there, because my charms that are blessed with the magic for protection, and I was the only one that had that sensation of tasting dirt. So I believe maybe someone was too scared to say anything to me. This happened around a year ago, when I was visiting my grandparents. I was sleeping when I suddenly woke up. I wasn't wearing my glasses, but I was 100% sure someone stood in front of me. I immediately said hi, like it was normal. I thought it was my grandma, even though that would be weird too. Then I realized it was the middle of the night, and no one was in my room. Really weird. I never told anyone about it. I'm familiar with sleep paralysis, but I could move. I stood up, put the light on, grabbed my glasses, and no one was there. I think I was around 7, and was randomly playing on my own in my room with Legos. Then a weird orange-shaped thing sort of floated from my sister's room and went upstairs towards the attic. I, being a scared 7-year-old, ran downstairs. My mum believed me because she didn't think a 7-year-old could make up such a story. I went to school, told the story to some of my friends, and sometime later I was playing in my room together with a friend from school. And again, the orange-shaped thing floated from my sister's room to the attic. This time, I wasn't the only one who saw it. My friend did too. We were both scared and at once ran downstairs. We never saw it again for the remainder of the time that we lived in that house. I have several paranormal stories from personal experience, but this one has me the most stumped. Backstory. I had never thought I had any previous UAP experience, other than 6 hours of lost time while viewing the night sky outside a small southwestern Iowa town to view the black moon on September 9th. I remember it was a Friday. I had met what I call at a potential maybe time at a library while looking for a book, and perhaps a movie to keep me busy. There is a lot to this encounter of this particular person which cost me dearly, but that was later. At the time, he made me laugh, purporting he was unattached romantically, and he was a contractor who worked for my real estate friend. I invited him to come look over some outside work I needed done. He was a native Cree in Spanish, and in need of sage, something I had in my entire raised bed in my herb section. He did a mini sage cleansing and asked me to join him, which I felt honored to do. As he was leaving, he saw my stacks of astronomy magazines and asked if I was aware of the black moon. I told him I was planning on watching it, and he told me he had planned on doing the same, and did I mind him coming back at 9:30 p.m. to watch it with me. Not really believing he was interested in me, or that he would come by, I said yes. I still didn't believe he would go, but I prepared to go on my own. As I was leaving and locking up the house, he was stepping onto my porch. I drove us to the spot on the outskirts where I thought we might have the best view of the night sky, and since I had just met him, parked in a parking lot where there was ample lighting. We spoke lightly of the town and ourselves, probably providing an hour's conversation. At that point I turned to the car to check the time, noting it was 11 p.m. Since a haze had developed, we decided to try closer to the river, where we may catch the end of the event. It was darker there, and it was also along the highway bridge between two branches of the river. It was a 5-minute or less drive from the parking lot to the river, and we stayed an additional 10 minutes, and our stomachs growled in unison. So we laughed, embarrassed, and made the decision, since we weren't going to see the moon, to pick up a sandwich at Casey's gas station and head back to eat them. We drove the grid, basically a square of highway that's 2 miles from where we got the gas station. Upon standing in front of the clerk to place our order, I noticed the clock on the wall and asked him if it was broken. He said it wasn't and that it was 4 a.m. I was gobsmacked. I nudged my companion and he was speechless with me. We placed our orders, paid, and made our way back to the car. I don't remember saying much to him, except asking him if he thought we had been out for that long. Was I imagining that time flew like that? Did I talk his ear off? I remember our conversation wasn't that deep, just surface and introductory. I remember periods of looking out the car window. I also cannot, and have not since my younger days, been able to sit for longer than an hour in the car, without taking breaks to answer the call of nature. He agreed he had the same issue, and he had eaten before coming to my home earlier. We finished our sandwiches in silence, and he walked the short distance home. We never did reconcile that time. However, we banded about it, primarily with a lack of discomfort in our bodies from sitting there hours, or a need to use the facilities. I have since recalled other situations. One, a dream which left me sobbing upon waking, which would have taken place 2 years ago after my daughter was born. She is 28 years older now, where her father and I were divorcing and clearing furniture out of the apartment. I was to meet him there, entering the apartment first, and in my dream, seeing a 4-year-old boy in the bathroom mirror, as I was splashing water on my face. The boy was out of place, and I thought it was a neighbour's child who followed me, if I had left the door open as I came in. This boy morphed into something else, his features changing back and forth from a little boy in a coat with sandy brown hair to something not human. He would smirk at me, and I pretended not to notice. I get a very heavy feeling in the area of my heart as I describe him. I became paralyzed as other people entered the room with machinery, an IV, AKG, and some others. I was given an injection, laid out on the bed, while these technicians, humans, worked with machines measuring my vitals and brain patterns. As they did so, a woman was lying on my bed next to me, touching my hair, saying that now I could remember who I truly am and who I was truly meant to be. They had me at different junctures of my life, chipping away at my hopes, dreams, intellect, whatever I valued about myself. They would remove, come in and mind control me, for instance. Instead of being a psychiatrist, turn me towards a career in political science. I would be proud that I was healthy, with good teeth, and I would awake with all my teeth to be shattered in my mouth, all just to see how far they could remove me from my true path, true self-love and acceptance, only to erase my memories of what I was and what I am left with. I used to hold Shakespeare plays, names, dates, and when I turned 30, it was as if a light bulb went out in my brain, and I could no longer hold lyrics to songs I performed in years without prompting, and I begged them not to remove memories of my true self. They injected me anyway, smug as they were, leaving with no proof and no trace that they'd been there. I felt myself clinging to me. I awoke in such a state, not knowing if it were real or what reality was. It was a horrible dream. I had it earlier in the same year as the missing time. Recently, I remember at sundown on a farm we went to in Ashton country, seeing at sunset when I was 11, a series of what I thought were white jets flying dangerously close to each other, one on the hill adjacent to our farm, or for the sonic boom. There was no wind and no noises for them. Another experience was during the time my father was in Columbia, Missouri. My mother, brothers, and I were evacuated along with the rest of the town at 3 a.m. by men carrying suits, claiming to be the FBI, due to a gas leak, and we had to leave, but could return in the morning. There were trains which would take us throughout town. The line is closed now. Corn granary and some other storage tanks. Skelgers used to be there. We left our 80-year-old neighbour. Mary did not. She died of cancer a few years later. Odd coincidence. My father and several of his Sunday adult class either contract prostate or colon cancer within the next few years. Unfortunately, in my father's case, it was terminal. I was 12 when his evacuation occurred, and my father passed away at 40 when I was 17, and both my brothers were 16 and 12 respectively, leaving his widow, my mother, at 38, and had ovarian cancer, which she thankfully survived. I was around 17, and had gotten home from work rather late. I went straight to my room to change and found myself hungry. It was probably around 1 a.m, but I didn't want to cook anything and make too much noise, as I was afraid I'd wake the parents. So when I ventured to my kitchen, I started shuffling through the cupboards, looking for a quick fix of a snack to tide me over until the morning. Now, our kitchen was in a position so that the kitchen door led to the backyard. The door itself was an old wooden door, but my dad had added one of those metal security gate / screen doors on the outside for good measure. It was one of the security gates where the holes on the door were small enough so that insects could not get through, and therefore we could leave the wooden door open in the summer to allow for a breeze to go through the house. In addition to the security door, my dad had also installed one of those auto security lights. You know, the ones that go on automatically when their motion sensor is triggered. Usually the light would only go on when I would let my dog outside at night to pee. However, on this night, he was already lounging in my room, waiting for me to come back with some snacks for him as well. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I was busy creeping through the cupboards and finally hit the jackpot with some Pop-Tarts. Knowing my dog, I didn't want to chance him snagging the tart from my hand as I ate it, so I opened them up and started munching on them in the kitchen. As I'm standing there eating the first Pop-Tart, I hear a faint whistling sound from outside, as the wooden door was open. At first I thought it was the wind, but then I noticed that the whistling was a distinct tune, not random whistling. I didn't know the tune, but I could tell it was from a song. It sounded like a happy and sad song all rolled into one. After standing there for about 20 seconds, I decided that it must be one of my friends that lives down the block that's trying to mess with me. Maybe they were on the other side of the fence and whistling there to scare me. Right when I'm thinking this, I see the security lights suddenly turn on. I quickly looked around the surrounding area, but I don't see anyone or anything that could have set the light off, and the whistling persists. Now I'm in semi-panic mode. Is it one of my friends? If so, where are they hiding? If it's not one of them, who is it? I am stuck standing there now, and can't move as I stare outside waiting for something to happen. Nothing does. A minute or two goes by, with the whistling continuing and the light remaining on. Suddenly the whistling gets louder, and I see the doorknob to my metal door start moving up and down, and I can see through the metal door to see there's no one there. The whistling sound is now right outside, and the doorknob keeps moving like someone's trying to get in. The security light is on, and I still have a clear view of the front of the door, and know that someone is trying to get in. Screw the Pop-Tarts. I dropped the box and jetted back to my room, slammed and locked the door and hid under my blankets, with a baseball bat and dog. I never went out to the kitchen at night after that. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the stories, please don't forget that you can always drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you liked it a bit more than that, why not subscribe and press the little bell icon for good measure. We do have new content every night. If there's a story that you wish to share, feel free to send it to my email or my Reddit. Either are fine, and I look forward to receiving your stories. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.